Hi everyone, I'm Alexander Zeitlin. This is the Lockdown Lecture Series for Intermediate Violin, adapted from the Alias Music Foundations course and adapted for the classroom setting. Let's begin with Lesson 2. So last week when we left off, I had assigned for you guys to learn all 4 of these sections, and I will play them for you now, just so you guys can kind of test your work with them. So if you guys could play along, you probably know them pretty well. What I like to look for with work I've assigned to my students is that they have done all these things to nearly 100%. The question is, how accurate is your work? And it should be somewhere in the 100% range. The reality is it'll be somewhere in the 90% range, but the way that I test if my students are ready is I just have them do the last 2 steps. I just turn on the metronome and just say play from the beginning, and they'll play all their sections they were assigned. And I'll say, great, good job, assuming they made it. And please close the music or turn away. Usually just turn away so you don't have to reopen it. And let's play it from memory. As long as they can do those 2 things, you're in great shape. Your accuracy work is done. If it's not, I've got to use lesson time now to correct notes, correct fingerings, and we get less time to spend on this, which means we get less time to spend on this. So get your accuracy work done. Always test those last 2 steps. In fact, if you know your material really well, instead of working through all of these steps on your week and your practice, you can just work on these 2. Really, like, if it's my first day working on this section, and my next day I'm not going to ignore this, if I go on to A2, I'm not going to ignore A1. I'm going to go back and practice A1 again. You should practice it separate bows to make sure your notes are still good. With the bowings without the metronome to warm up to the rhythm. With the metronome then to make sure your rhythm's good, and then by memory, just kind of go through all the steps. Once you know it and you want to just review things, just review these 2. Frees up some time. You can work on new material. So before we go on to new material, let's take a look at what we would do with our quality work. So, our first element of quality is intonation. Now, intonation, for now, we will spend the least amount of time on. Just basically because we will very briefly ask the question, is it in tune or not? And if it's not obviously yes, then it's probably no, and we should tune it. But let me briefly talk about intonation standards. For beginners, when you're just starting your instrument, you just want your note to sound like your note. If you're playing A, B, C sharp, D, E, you just want it to sound like that. If my second finger is not in the C sharp position all the way, it's fine. Even if I play slowly, if it doesn't sound like C natural, just sound totally like a wrong note, then I would stop a beginner and say, hey, look, just make sure your finger's in the right position. Let's get used to the right positions, then we'll get you playing into it. For people who have a really sensitive ear to intonation, they want to work on it in more detail, that's great. As an intermediate player, we want to make sure that it is in tune in a slow tempo and that you are keeping that intonation, like it actually sounds good in tune. If you're playing and you're thinking, it sounds a little pitchy, and it sounds like this, its notes are kind of coming by. You see, this is how you can tell really, a good violinist can play in tune on, really well in tune. A great violinist can play out of tune on purpose. Throw a joke in there. I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah. So as you're playing it, you go, that does not sound right. But the notes are kind of going by. I'm not sure what to fix. You play it slowly again. You tune it. And you re-add all of your accuracy steps and make sure it's in tune. As long as it sounds reasonably in tune in a normal tempo, we're good to go. We don't have to like tune to an advanced level at the moment. So I addressed intonation. If it sounds reasonably in tune, you're good. Just move on to the second step. I know that's sacrilege to some, teachers in schools of music, but we'll work on everything in its own time. We will get to high level intonation, we don't want to get stuck on it. All right, so we're ready for sound and vibrato. Now, as an intermediate player, there is no one answer to, did I say vibrato? I meant sound and articulation. Getting ahead of myself. So sound and articulation. The reason I add articulation in there is because if it's supposed to be off the string, or supposed to have short articulation, we have to work on our sound in that context. You can't have like long bows and really nice sound and then do the staccato markings and then you're like, oh, my sound is completely off. You have to work within the kind of articulation that you need. In this piece, it's all just long legato, so it's not a problem. So anyway, you have to start thinking about what kind of sound you want, not just, am I making sound errors? Is there crunchy sound, or my bow change is bad? So that's one thing, but the other thing is you have to start assessing for yourself. You have to be able to play a section and ask yourself, what could I improve about my sound? And that will change, because if your problem is bow changes and you're like, oh, I need to fix my bow changes, and you work on that for a week, if you did the right thing, now your bow changes are good. What's the next weakest thing? You really shouldn't be working on the same thing over and over. So now that you checked your intonation, you're just going to do a quality run through. Now the first time, just play it the way you like it, and listen. You should be playing by memory now, because all quality work should be done by memory. And you just play, and I will kind of demonstrate maybe some sound problems, and then I will discuss some possible quality issues on this piece. Notice I haven't used any vibrato yet, because we haven't gotten to that. Vibrato is the color of your tone, the quality of your tone itself is just in the sound. So if you played it and you're like, oh, I'm not really sure what I should improve, ask your teacher, or try again. Really try to listen, try to figure out yourself. So some of the things that I did wrong, I had an abrupt bow change. I didn't distribute my bow very well, and because of that I had an abrupt bow change. So I need to make sure that I'm using my bow well enough so that I have time to slow down and change my bow smoothly. Now that's much better. I also did not use enough bow here, and because of that I choked my sound on this note. Right, so again, another bow distribution issue. You may find that you have uneven tone because your bow is wandering on this piece. You may find that that your sound is too heavy. You're just pressing into the string. It's sort of like a light and dreamy piece. But once you have played it and you like your sound, just listen to yourself honestly and say, I like it, or I don't. You've maybe gotten some feedback from a teacher. Now you can go on to your next step. So next step is vibrato. And this is where we're going to learn a new technique. So vibrato plays an important role in this particular movement, not every movement. Fast movements, probably not going to use much vibrato. But vibrato, we only add after we have good sound, because it is the color of our piece. We've sort of shaped it with our sound, and now we're going to color it. And our first sort of special technique, I'm doing a good job holding my instrument with my chin, and I can type here. So special techniques is going to be vibrato conditioning. Okay, so And to do vibrato conditioning, very simple. You just turn every note into a long note, okay? And you just experiment with the vibrato. This is a squiggly line vibrato mark of every note. And you just think, do I want like an intense sounding vibrato? Do I want a warm vibrato? Do I want a bright vibrato? And just listen to your vibrato and you think, well, if I have this, it's maybe a little slow. Or if I have this, maybe a little fast. If I have this, maybe it's a little narrow. And you just long bows until you find vibrato that you like. So we worked on our sound. Now we're just going to do whole bows until we like the vibrato that we want. And it just gets our hand ready also to like play, like be in a position to play vibrato on every note. Once you've found the color vibrato you like, add it in with the rhythm and bowings. And I should mention, all the quality things you do, forget the rhythmic, like metronomic playing. Make room and space to like play with beautiful sound, play with beautiful vibrato. And remember, everything that we do here is cumulative, okay? You can't be thinking like, well, I'm gonna, now I'm gonna play with great vibrato, and then you turn like back into lousy sound, or maybe your intonation falls apart. It's all cumulative. So now I'm going to add the vibrato back in with the rhythm and bowing and just see how we do. And I might ask myself, did I vibrate evenly through all the notes? Did I keep the color that I want? Did my sound stay, or did my sound like kind of get worse when I added the vibrato? It's very difficult to like keep the same quality of all your different elements and then add the next one. It takes like double the concentration every time you add another element. So lastly, if you're happy with your vibrato, you feel comfortable, time to add some movement. Slower pieces, you will move a lot. It's a big part of your expressive playing. I think we've all watched people play sometimes where we think, if I close my eyes, it just sounds so beautiful. This person's playing so nicely. If I open my eyes, what does it look like? I'm looking at a robot. So it really is part of your presentation of your piece. You are communicating a musical idea, not just playing, it's not just playing sounds. So just as a fundamental principle, your movement, the foundation of your movement as a violinist is the movement of your scroll. Okay, so your scroll is going to move sort of in a pivotal motion from the left to the right. It shouldn't really move up and down. This isn't good movement for violinists. We shouldn't be swaying back and forth. That's not very good movement. But we move and we follow the arc of our bow. So your scroll, as you look at it, you should see it pointing at like one corner of the room, and then you move your bow and it points at another corner of your room. Big forte phrase, you make a big movement. Small piano phrase, you make a small movement. So here's approximately what I would be looking for, and you have to do this in front of a mirror because you really can't see what you look like moving. I'm doing this in a chair, but you guys would do this standing. I'd probably do something like this. And my movement reflects my playing. When you move and you're standing, you want to make sure that every joint in your body is capable of movement. Your knees aren't locked, your hips aren't locked, because that'll be stiff, and then another party will be moving, but eventually it will all just stiffen up. So just like the way you work on your sound and vibrato, you look at your movement in the mirror and you think, do I like it? What don't I like? You kind of have to take it apart. When you've done all that you can with it, that's a great time to bring it to a teacher and just say, hey, could you listen to how I play this? Or maybe it's your lesson, you have to do it. And you think, what can I do better? I think I've run out of ideas. And you have a good teacher, your teacher will give you like 20 things you didn't even notice. And now you have a lot of things to work on. Don't worry, it's not the end. You fix all those 20 things, you're like, great, I think it's perfect. Your teacher will give you now 100 smaller things that you can improve. So this is the cool thing about music. It's just sort of endlessly interesting. All right, this is the end of lesson 2. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. I think I got everything. Yes. I have to assign the new. I did almost forget one thing. So the B sections are assigned. I'm assuming you all did your A sections with excellent accuracy. Well, now I'm doing the B sections, and you will start, careful, in basically 4th position up here on the A string. Okay, so make sure that you're on the A string there. I'm writing in Roman numeral 2 here, which is not 2nd position. It means 2nd string on your A string. So it can be like 2, 3, 4. Okay. Goes until here. You'll be happy to know that the B2 section is exactly the same as A4. So homework for this week is learn, why did I write B4? Homework for this week is learn B1 and B2, so be able to play with the metronome and by memory, and then be able to play your A sections with your best quality work, and we'll give you some feedback on that next time. All right, see you guys next time.